I could probably easily make the argument that over-the-counter hearing aids have made things worse for people with hearing loss. Hey guys, Cliff Olson, Doctor of Audiology and founder of Applied Hearing Solutions in Phoenix, Arizona, and in this video, I'm discussing why over-the-counter hearing aids have not had nearly the impact that we had hoped for. You may recall that back in 2017, Senators Elizabeth Warren and Chuck Grassley got their Over-the-Counter Hearing Aid Act signed into law by President Donald Trump. Immediately after becoming a law, hearing aid manufacturers started manufacturing over-the-counter hearing aids, and hearing aid adoption rates in the United States went from 34% to nearly 100%, because anybody who wanted a hearing aid could get that hearing aid at a very low cost, and they no longer had to go into a hearing care professional to get it. Okay, so clearly that did not happen. But what did happen? Well, a whole lot of nothing. Following that bill being signed into law, the FDA was tasked with creating the new category of over-the-counter hearing aids. And that is the last that we heard about it for years. Until 2021, when then President Joe Biden issued an executive order forcing the FDA to create this new category on a timeline. Finally, in August of 2022, the FDA created the guidelines for what an over-the-counter hearing aid was and who these hearing aids were intended for. 2 months later, we had our first over-the-counter hearing aids hitting the market. So what happened? Well, over-the-counter hearing aids started selling like hotcakes, and greedy hearing aid manufacturers started downsizing, and local hearing aid clinics started shutting their doors because the middlemen that are known as audiologists and hearing instrument specialists were no longer needed. Okay, so that didn't happen either. So what did happen? Unfortunately, the answer is still a whole lot of nothing. According to the Hearing Industries Association, in the first quarter of 2023, prescription hearing aid sales rose by over 9%, while over-the-counter hearing aid sales only accounted for 1% of total sales. I've even heard from several reliable industry insiders that over-the-counter hearing aid return rates are upwards of 70%, meaning that 70% of individuals who purchase over-the-counter hearing aids end up returning them for a refund. Compare that to the industry average of prescription hearing aids, which is only around 20%, and if you go to a high-end hearing aid clinic that follows comprehensive audiologic best practices like mine at Applied Hearing Solutions, that return rate is less than 5%. Because let's face it, you can have the most amazing hearing aid in the world, but that hearing aid will not perform correctly unless it's been fit and programmed properly. Of course, things were still a bit early for us to make a determination on whether or not over-the-counter hearing aids would be successful. So by the end of 2023, hopefully we would see better data. I mean, we would see better data, right? Nope. In fact, by the end of 2025, a former staffer for Senator Elizabeth Warren, Bharat Ramaruti, published an article titled "The Sad Story of Over-the-Counter Hearing Aids" about how the Over-the-Counter Hearing Aid Act has largely been a failure up to this point. They indicated in the article that per recent survey data, only 2% of American adults aged 40 and older with hearing difficulties reported purchasing an over-the-counter hearing aid in the last 6 months, and that high-profile manufacturers entered the market and then pulled out. Some big retailers halted or dramatically curtailed offerings after disappointing sales numbers, indicating that ultimately regulatory reforms alone have not produced nearly the level of impact we expected. This same former staffer also co-published an additional report in November of 2025 on how to overcome barriers to over-the-counter hearing aid access, which is ironic since one of the biggest talking points about why the Over-the-Counter Hearing Aid Act was necessary was to overcome barriers of hearing aid accessibility. In this report, the authors came up with what I would consider to be a ton of really bad ideas to fix the bad Over-the-Counter Hearing Aid Act policy. Because there is one thing that I know for sure, and that is, if the government didn't get the original policy right, them instituting more policies to fix their original policy is probably not going to go that well. So why have over-the-counter hearing aids not been successful when this is one of the few things that actually had bipartisan support that spanned over the course of several different presidencies? Well, since you're watching my channel, I'm going to tell you what I think. First, I believe that a lot of the individuals who were hoping for an over-the-counter hearing aid category were individuals who didn't even qualify for those hearing aids. What I mean is that over-the-counter hearing aids are intended for adults with perceived mild to moderate hearing loss. And everyone who had been spending thousands of dollars on prescription hearing aids were hoping that they could just transition over to an over-the-counter hearing aid that was cheaper, only to find out that those over-the-counter hearing aids were not even capable of effectively treating their hearing loss. Second, individuals with mild to moderate hearing loss typically typically are not as concerned about their hearing loss as individuals who have more significant loss. And if you don't feel like your hearing loss is a big enough problem to solve for, you're not going to solve for it using a prescription hearing aid or an over-the-counter hearing aid. Third, the performance of over-the-counter hearing aids has been, not very good, to put it nicely. In fact, I've been so disappointed with the performance of over-the-counter hearing aids when I've been doing my reviews of these different devices that I do not even publish them on my channel. That's because even if I tell people who watch my channel that these devices are pretty much garbage, they're gonna purchase them anyway. Fourth, over-the-counter hearing aids are actually more expensive than what we thought they were gonna be. The over-the-counter hearing aids that cost you only $100 to $200 typically make your hearing worse while you're wearing them. And the over-the-counter hearing aids that I would consider to be halfway decent are still a couple $1,000s. And for that amount of money, you can go ahead and get yourself a basic pair of prescription hearing aids that would outperform the over-the-counter hearing aids, and you get professional care along with it. And fifth, many people need the support of a hearing care professional, not just to successfully treat their hearing loss with a hearing aid, but to properly encourage them to do hearing treatment with a hearing aid. It is very unlikely that individuals with hearing loss walk into a department store, see a kiosk of over-the-counter hearing aids, and say, you know what? I think that's the right hearing aid for me. I think I'm gonna get those hearing aids and solve all of the communication difficulties that I have. You would be surprised at the amount of convincing a hearing care professional has to do for an individual who has a profound level hearing loss, let alone an individual who only has a mild to moderate level hearing loss. Over the years, I've changed my opinion on over-the-counter hearing aids, and I now believe that the solution to the accessibility and affordability problem for individuals with hearing loss is education. If you live in the United States, you have a ton of nonprofit and charitable organizations that can get you low-cost or no-cost hearing aid treatment. One organization that I volunteered for before is Hearing the Call, and they're not dispensing garbage hearing aids. They're dispensing good quality hearing aids. I even participated in a hearing aid give day with Mr. Beast out in North Carolina. Every single person that we saw at that event got the best hearing aid technology, fit and programmed by a hearing care professional who followed best practices. Now, does that happen all the time? No, but if you look hard enough in your own state, you should be able to find a charitable organization that can help you with finding hearing aid treatment that's affordable using prescription hearing aids. If you don't want to do that, like I mentioned before, you can actually get prescription hearing aids that are lowered levels of technology for the same price that you would pay for a decent pair of over-the-counter hearing aids. And when you buy prescription hearing aids, you actually get professional care making sure that those hearing aids are fit and programmed properly. Heck, you can even find prescription hearing aids from a local hearing aid clinic and fit by a provider who follows best practices for around the same price that you can get a pair of over-the-counter hearing aids for. And those over-the-counter hearing aids are not going to come with any professional care. Of course, if you would like to find one of these clinics that has a best practice provider, I highly recommend that you check out my website, hearingup.com, and find a Hearing Up network member in your area. Hearing Up providers have been vetted and are committed to helping you find an affordable hearing aid option that actually works and follows comprehensive audiologic best practices to ensure that you can hear your absolute best with your devices. So if you need help with your hearing, but you're not confident that you can do it yourself with over-the-counter hearing aids, finding a Hearing Up network member near you can definitely help. Now, over-the-counter hearing aids have not been all bad. In my clinic, we consistently see new patients coming in with over-the-counter hearing aids looking for help. And each time that we test their hearing and verify their hearing aid programming, we identify that their over-the-counter hearing aids are nowhere even close to their hearing loss prescription. And of course, the limited programming capabilities of an over-the-counter hearing aid prevents us from programming them any better, essentially leading those individuals into the realization that they need prescription hearing aids if they want to solve their hearing difficulties. This makes over-the-counter hearing aids a terrific stepping stone for a lot of individuals who never would have treated their hearing loss if they didn't get the chance to try to do it themselves. The only real issue that I see about over-the-counter hearing aids that I do not think can be solved is that a lot of individuals who try over-the-counter devices and don't have success never try to treat their hearing loss ever again. Essentially, it reinforces their belief that hearing aids just wouldn't work for them. Now, just in case you think I'm being overly biased against over-the-counter hearing aids because I have a clinic to run and I want to sell more prescription hearing aids, I want you to check out videos on my channel over the past 8 years where I've been a very outspoken supporter of over-the-counter hearing aids. Unfortunately, I've seen too much at this point for me to have any faith that over-the-counter hearing aids are going to do anything positive for individuals with hearing loss. Will it get better? I hope so, But at this point, I'm done holding my breath. Instead, I'm gonna focus my energy on ensuring that you understand the magnitude of successfully treating your hearing loss with prescription hearing aids, even if those prescription hearing aids are low-cost devices. But I wanna hear from you. Have you ever tried over-the-counter hearing aids? If you have, let me know what your experience was like down in the comment section, and I'll see you in the next video.